Hi, I'm Paul Carpenter, currently teaching middle school humanities at Anglo-American School of Moscow, which is a BYOD school. I'm here to demonstrate the ways that I'm using a few of the Google Apps for Education that I've been exploring in Jeff Utek's GAFE course, which I highly recommend. This is my final project for this course, and I also hope it might be helpful or inspiring for my colleagues at school and elsewhere. In taking this course and applying GAFE in my practices, I have 3 or 4 main goals. One is to go as paperless as possible. This is, for environmental reasons, but also it's to make learning as engaging and personalized as possible. And I think that technology is a great way to do that. It also helps students get more organized, which is part of the personalizing process. Number 2, it offers students a more authentic, purposeful audience. Even in the 90s when I did my graduate work for my teaching degree, my research actually showed that when students write and have a sense that they're doing whatever work in school for a real audience, they'll perform better and learn more. And number 3, I would like to figure out ways within a paperless environment to provide rich, robust, expedient, useful feedback to students and parents. And I feel like some of the Google apps, because they're so easily shared and collaborated on, that's a great way to do that. And lastly, I'm really only beginning to experiment with these things. And I find that Google is a great way to keep stretching what I'm doing in teaching. So it becomes kind of a PD method for me to continually learn and teach and figure out new ways to do things in my classroom. Additionally, I've found that Google Plus has been just a great resource for connecting with people. And I'll mention a couple of the individuals that I've started to follow or kind of associate with via Google+. So the first thing I want to tell you about is the way that I've organized folders for my class, for myself and for my students, both. What I started with is, I found out about a thing called G-class folders, which is a script made by a guy named Andrew Stillman, who's quite a genius in terms of making Google really usable in many, many powerful ways. Anyway, I started with a basic listing, I should say a spreadsheet of my class, first, last name, email addresses, class, and period. And then up in the tools area, I went down to the script gallery and did a search for G-class folders, version 2 now, and I installed that. Once that was done, it puts this tab up here, and you can kind of basically walk through, and if you go to the website for G-class folders, it'll really step you through it with video and extra help. And essentially you run that, and what ends up happening is it creates Humanities 7 for me is this folder. And inside it, there's a teacher folder, which is just for all the things that I might need to, keep track of for myself and generate and just build up. Humanities 7, there's a view folder. The view folder is things that I'm going to hand out to kids. And these are things that, they cannot edit, but they'll make copies of and keep for themselves as they work on them or look at them. Humanities 7 Edit is going to be a folder where I haven't used it yet, but it would be collaborative documents, things that I might want many students or the whole class to work on at the same time or, kind of contribute to all equally. And lastly, it creates Dropbox folders. And what these are folders, from my view, that put all student work in one place, which is a beautiful thing for me. Because in the past I've had to, when students share a document with me, I've had to collect them and congregate them in a folder and then deal with them in different ways and try to send them back to students, and it just kind of is cumbersome in some ways. So these, you can see first of all that these have these have a shared symbol on them, because this Humanities 7 Period 2 actually is a class that I co-teach with another teacher with some students who need some extra help in different ways, and so I can actually share all of these pieces with that other teacher. And what's inside here is folders for each kid. And when the students actually, after you run the script, what the students have in their own shared with me folder or view, when you click that, is they have a Humanities 7 view, Humanities 7 edit, and then they have just their own Dropbox. And so if they go into their Dropbox, they will have anything that they've worked on, and they just drop it in there, and they don't have to remember to hit shared. They don't have to remember to, maybe put certain naming conventions on it so you can sort it later. It just is all in one spot, and it makes it really simple for you and for the student to see what they've done, what you've done, to give them feedback or assessment or whatever, and it's all in one place, and it really, I think, streamlines the process for everyone. So let's then kind of walk through the way I've used these folders and the way I'm distributing and helping kids kind of interact in different ways using the Google Docs. In the Humanities View folder, for a project that we're working on, the students take a trip at the beginning of the year for a week to an area called Kaliningrad, which is in it's not connected to Russia, but it's part of the Russian Federation. It's over on the Baltic. And so there were different topics that I wanted small groups to do some research on, to write about, and then to present to the rest of the class. So these are kind of just the topics, and we broke into groups. Once they were in those groups, then I gave them this document in their in the View folder. So again, what happens is they make a copy of this, and then they can work on it. And they went through the top pieces kind of in small groups, figuring out how they were going to organize themselves and the approach they wanted to take. And then they started to do research. And this research tool in the Google Docs is brilliant, I think, especially for middle school kids. It makes research easy and helps them keep track of their sources, and it's very streamlining for helping this happen. So for example, we're looking at Baltic amber. That's one of the natural resources one group was researching. When they get here and they can kind of look through some of these sites, what's nice is that first they can preview and see, oh yeah, maybe this looks like they're just trying to sell things. Maybe I'm not going to go to that one, but maybe this one might look better, right? So they go to that site, they start to read, they do some research, and in terms of the citation, they could do a couple things. Once they start to write some details here, if they want to put a link into the site, if they want to put in a link to the site, they can automatically do that. And then also, just to make the citation itself, they just click this, and it puts a footnote here and puts the citation down at the bottom of the page. And you can even tell it, do MLA format or whichever you would like to do. That's kind of, I think for students who want to work quickly, who don't have a lot of patience for those little details, it's really good. Also, then if you do image searches and they find, some image that they think is really cool, and they want to just drag that right into their notes, and they can go find it later or insert it into some other thing that they're going to work on, a presentation or a web page or something. They can just drag that in, and again, it puts the citation down at the bottom for where that image came from. You can even go up here and tell it what kind of images to look through. So that's how they did their research. Once they did the research, then I created some just basic kind of framework websites for them to use in terms of presenting this information for each other. I created a home page just to get things started, and then I created a page for each group, and I was able to set the editing rights for each group specifically, just so those students who were working on that topic could edit those parts of this website. What I also liked about it a lot is that this became something that we could refer to even when we were in Kaliningrad, we've already been, it was last week, and we could go back and find out, like, oh, what did somebody say about the amber trade and da 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 da. So this allowed kids to do a number of things. If they wanted to do kind of like a Google presentation and then just throw that up on their on the website as their way to present and keep this information here, that I thought that was just fine. If I go to a couple other pages here, where's the other one? Yeah, a lot of them wanted to do the presentation, but they also then were able to use maybe some other images and text. They inserted some Google Maps or other pieces of multimedia that they may have found. They created another citations page, which was a separate Google Doc. It allows them a lot of freedom with connecting and building up what they'd like to show in their own way. There was a group here on this one that had some information that even included, no, that's not the one I'm looking for. Oh, this one though includes, some links to some YouTube videos. They could have actually embedded them so they'd show right on their page, but they just did it that way. Or this one gave us a bunch of information and even brought in a website to show us the current weather in Kaliningrad and a forecast for the upcoming days, so that before we were going, we could easily find that information. So this was a really cool way for the students to feel like they were informing each other, showing each other what they had learned, and really making it a shared collaborative effort. So then when students have done their research and they're working on their project, I also want them to be really aware of their targets, their goals, their aims for this project in terms of how they're conducting their research, the things that I want to see, how they're going to be assessed on their presentation, and how they put the information together for everyone else to see and understand. So in the Humanities View folder, I have a rubric for them to look at that's fully filled out with descriptors of every level of performance. This is in the View folder, so they can look at it ahead of time. They know what they're looking for, but that's not how I'm not going to like print those or make a shared one of those for each kid. What I then did was, back in the teacher folder, I've also found this, a different script called Doctopus, which is really, really brilliant, again, made by Andrew Stillman. And it starts with the same basic layout. I've added a parent email column, and I've also added a student folder key column. And this is basically like when you go into each kid's Dropbox, if you click on their Dropbox, you'll see this thing up here. And once I have those folder keys in the right order associated with each student, when I run Doctopus, it asks me where I want to put the document that I'm distributing to students. And it allows me to put them into their individual Dropbox folders so that they're automatically right there, shared, ready for them to use. Then, once the students, and then it creates a screen that's going to look like this. So each of these links is that piece of work that student is going to write on. It shows me when they last edited it. I can put in a grade. I can put in written feedback. But even cooler than that is, let's say the students are finished, they've gone through, they've given me some good insights, and now I understand and I'm ready to actually grade them or give them an assessment of how they did on this project. There's a thing called Gubrick that you run from inside this spreadsheet view. You say attach Gubrick. And I have that rubric that I showed you earlier already attached. So when I go here and click on this little thing, which is installed in Chrome, you always have to use Chrome because it's just the best. It actually takes that rubric and puts it, creates like this pop-up. So I can right here put in, the numbers that I think this student achieved. It's going to shade in the box for her and kind of record this feedback that I'm given. I can put in comments, and then it's actually going to email the rubric score to the student. And what it shows them is it gives them the text in this box in an email format. And I am hoping to figure out that I can also send it to both parents and students at the same time. So I'm using this as, I think, a great streamlined way to provide feedback. And I could easily, if this was like an essay that they were working on, I could do the same thing. And I could go in and say insert a comment, and I could put some thoughts in here and add a comment. And then also, again, and then also do the rubric, filling that out, and then send it to the student as I worked on it. And this, I think, is just going to be a brilliant way to streamline this whole process of providing feedback and assessment details. So those are a few of the ways that I'm using Google Apps for education in my classroom. But before I go, let me show you just a few other cool things that I've started to discover and play with. One is in the Drive view. Down here you can say connect to more apps. And one thing that I wanted students to do, like earlier this year, was use some kind of visual brainstorming kind of tool. Like I used to have inspiration at a different school, but that's a purchased thing. So I found this one, Lucid Chart, which is free for education. And what's cool about a lot of these, when you connect these apps through Google or through the Chrome store, they automatically connect and save in students' drives or in your own drive. So in my Lucid Chart drive, anything that I do in Lucid Chart becomes or gets automatically saved in my own drive, which I think is super cool. And I found some really good apps and suggested them for like our math teachers. There's like a graphing calculator, and there's another one that's just another like geographer's sketchpad or one of those others. Also, I love the fact that Chrome allows you to have kind of like these different identities, or I forget what they call them, but something like that. I like to try to keep my work life and my private, personal life sort of separate in some ways. So, like all my bookmarks up here, all the passwords for my school accounts of different things are saved in one identity, according to this email address. But if I go to my other identity, my sort of like personal identity, then I have my Google Plus, sort of like the PD stuff that I've been doing. I'm following Jay Atwood, who's from the Singapore American School. I follow Jeff Utek, of course. I follow, some of these different groups, Google Apps for Education. I've joined. There's Education Revolution. There's one for Google Apps Scripts. There's all kinds of great communities you can join and just keep learning and educating yourself further. I also wanted to put in a plug for UPD, which is a website that is basically all about people teaching themselves more about how to use Google Apps. And Andrew Stillman particularly puts a lot of his things here. This is where I found out about and watched videos and learned more about like Doctopus and Gubrick and these different things. And there's still a ton I want to go and learn, and it's just a matter of finding the time to figure it out and then think about how you can best put it into practice. So that's my journey at the moment, and I'd love to hear from anybody who is using some of the same things and would like to either make suggestions or learn from me. I'd love to learn from you. See you later.